And we welcome you back to the program. It's been a while since we all settled in on these friendly confines. A lot of changes, certainly around college football and in the SEC. We'll cover all of that for you. But regardless, we hope everybody had a nice month of July. We are on the final day of July, and tomorrow August comes. And with that, certainly a great deal of college football news. Let's begin with the absolute latest. Deshaun Hand. Arrest puts Nick Saban in another uncomfortable position. It's the headline in the Sporting News. A lot of controversy, but who is Deshaun Hand? Before we get too deep into the weeds, one of the top players in the 2014 draft. He is a preseason first-team All-American, one of 10 players from Alabama, 7 career sacks, and certainly one of the keys to Alabama's defense. Also a very good record off the field, an academic all-SEC player. So that story broke Saturday morning, and more information coming out as we speak. And we'll share all of that with you as we move throughout the next 4 hours. According to Tide Sports, Aaron Suttles, who will join us a little bit later on, Deshaun was actually asleep in his car when he was arrested. He was, according to this report, in a parked car and not driving at the time. That is very confusing. I am not an expert on city and county and state law in the state of Alabama, but according to the state law, he was deemed to be in quote unquote constructive possession of the vehicle. I guess if you're in the vehicle and it's yours and you have the keys to it, even though you weren't driving and the vehicle was parked, you were the man. And according to the Tuscaloosa police, he was arrested and charged with DUI. We'll get more on that a little bit later with Aaron Suttles. Bama will start camp on Thursday, one of the latest SEC schools to start. Georgia Vandy on the field this afternoon. Kentucky, South Carolina, and Tennessee already underway. And we'll see more and more as the week goes on. LSU today, Ole Miss with a new head coach. If you left us a couple weeks ago, you probably had not heard that news. Bama, as I mentioned, and A&M at the end of the week. Kirby Smart and the Dogs on the field today. Many unresolved questions. And we are anxious to see what the Dogs are going to look like since they're the pick to win the SEC East.
Offense, obviously throwing the ball more efficient is a big goal of ours, because I think if you throw the ball efficiently, you'll be able to run the ball with the backs we got. When you can't throw the ball, it makes it hard. It doesn't matter who your backs are. And we're going to have a lot of shuffling across the offensive line throughout camp. I'm excited about the opportunity for those guys. I think they're up to the challenge. I think it's going to be a really key, integral part for our success to figure out who are the best 8, who are the best 10, how many do we have that can play winning football on the offensive line. And you can't find that out on day 1, guys. You can't find it out on day 2 because you still got shorts on. But you start seeing who can learn and who's really serious about it early on.
Kirby Smart talking earlier today in Athens. So what are we going to do on our first day back from summer vacation? I'm about to tell you. Kevin Skarbinski, some critical words in his newspaper over the weekend about Deshaun Hand. Armin Katayan, who once did a 60 Minutes piece on Nick Saban. Dennis Dodd, a little bit later on who could end up replacing Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. Bud Elliott with Tomahawk Nation. And Aaron Suttles on the scoop that he just had, the new update on what exactly was going on with Deshaun Hand. But first, your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Randy's back. The whole gang is back. Welcome back, Randy. Welcome back to all of you. It's been fun, and it's been a good getaway, but we're glad you were back. We were actually on the radio a week before last when we spent the 4 hours on that Friday talking about Hugh Freeze's firing at Ole Miss. That will certainly be a topic that we delve into a little bit more today. Since that came out late on that Thursday night, a lot more has been revealed, and none of it good for Hugh Freeze. 855-242-7285. That is our number here on this Monday afternoon, the final day of July. Let's check in with Clarence first off in Atlanta. Hello, Clarence. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon to you, Paul. Hey, what up, man? Welcome back, Paul.
Good to have you back, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you all need your vacation, man, but it's not like this show being off for 2 weeks, man. It was not.
Yeah, listen, if it was up to us, we would never be off, but not up to us.
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't mind seeing the reviews of the team's history, but it's like when you have to see a guy like I am, as a Georgia guy, but I've seen all the other SEC games anyway, so it's like, okay, let's get on back to the radio show and to this year's football. But I want to comment on Nick Saban, Paul, and it's the Sean Hand situation. Like, I've heard people on this network, Paul, and ESPN, around a lot of networks in college football that was very hard to me on Jimbo Fisher. And they talk about, well, he had a lack of discipline and all this, and they attacked Urban Meyer. And I just think just because you're the greatest football coach of all time, like Nick Saban, I just think he has got a pass because his discipline hasn't been no much better than Jimbo Fisher's or any other great coach when it comes to elite players and starters, because he has given them passes just as much as Urban Meyer and Jimbo Fisher. And I felt like for many years they were trying to use those two guys and these other coaches as the cornerstone, where they only care about winning. And Nick Saban does all discipline, and that hasn't been. Is not going to get suspended for this Florida State game.
Well, no, he's not, and I think there obviously could be some mitigating circumstances, regardless of what he was or was not doing in this car. I would say from a legal sense, being under the influence and sleeping in your car is better than driving in your car, but you still put yourself in harm's way. But I think your point about Saban overall is correct. Very few people want to judge him. If it's Jimbo Fisher or Urban Meyer, most of us will look at it objectively. With Nick Saban, it's always, well, he knows best. Well, he is the best coach in college football, but he makes mistakes like I do and like you do.
Right, Paul, and I appreciate, and I give you the most respect out of anybody, Paul, because you don't care throwing punches at anybody. And there's a lot of, I'll just say cowards in the media, in my opinion, these networks who want to just take shots, either at Jimbo Fisher
but Clarence, you have fan bases out there, whether it's the Dallas Cowboys, whether it's the Patriots, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Florida. That doesn't matter. That fan base only looks at what their coach does, and they blindly support him no matter what he says, no matter what he does. And most of the time, that individual is probably correct. But mistakes are made, and I do think you have to look at things on an individual basis. And I would also say that the head coach is in a better position to judge than I am or you are, but I try to look at it objectively. He is looking at it in terms of his team, and sometimes you do have to send a message. And I think there have been plenty of people out there who have wondered about. And I said it to his face last year, and he blew up. Because he does not like to. Bullies don't like to be criticized. But in the end, I thought he was wrong then. I thought when I heard this story that the player should be suspended. I don't know what. I'm still not sure that much has changed. He was still in a car. He was still in a position that is not the embodiment of a leader on a college football team.
And I mean, look at Paul. I mean, you know my team is, but I think I'll be a hypocrite if Paul, you know me, and I just defend my players here at Georgia acting a fool, doing nothing. My coach giving them a pass, but then I come on this show and say, well, look at Miami, look at Florida State. That's an undisciplined program. Like, what kind of hypocrite would I be if I just look the other way, if I see nothing but suspension, and my players here at Georgia not doing what they're supposed to do, but then I want to target somebody else just because I don't like them at all, or I don't like their head coach. And I just think that's been a problem for a long time regarding no offense, Nick Saban, because Urban Meyer, you was there, Paul. Urban Meyer's been very scrutinized. Jimbo Fisher's been very scrutinized. There's been other coaches been scrutinized.
Well, my philosophy, Clarence, is that no one really should be above anything. I've been criticized in the last week for believing in Hugh Freeze. Well, you know what? I did. I sat in his office and he talked about his faith and he talked about what he's overcome, and I sat there and believed him. I believed him not because of one time, but I believed him over a series of conversations over a series of years. In the end, was my judgment incorrect? Yeah, I would say it was. Hugh Freeze was not the person I thought he was. I don't know who he is, frankly. And I don't think he's done a very good job of explaining himself since he was fired. But I do know how it's going to end up for him, and it's going to be terrible. And he will be thrown under the bus, and he'll be the scapegoat. And in the end, all the fans who loved him and supported him and the people like me who believed in him will all look at him and as an outcast, because that's what he's going to become based on the tracks that he left. We'll take a short break. 855-242-7285. Kevin Skarbinski a little bit later talking about Nick Saban and discipline. Many other guests as well. We are off and running. We welcome you back. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285 here. Let's go up to Newton, Mass. Mark, you're on. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how's it going? I was just listening in on what you had to say about the situation out of Alabama and how fans will always defend their team. And I think, you brought up the Patriots, and I think there is a fair amount of fanboyhood with the Patriots. But if you look at what's going on with the Red Sox right now with and what happened, probably most of the people who are listening to the show don't know what happened, but a TV analyst for the Red Sox was confronted on a plane after making a really not a terrible remark about David Price, and he got essentially, I'd call it borderline bullied on the team plane. And I think that, a lot of times the market, it really depends on the market, and that's what affects, the softness of players and how fans react and defend the organization.
Well, Mark, fans are fans. We all know what the word fan is a prefix for. And I don't blame them. If you're a fan, you it's just like in politics. Nobody wants to hear the other side. They just want to hear Anthony Scaramucci jump on your television and tell you how he's going to clean up the White House and he's going to fire everybody. Well, for those who aren't watching CNN and Fox right now, he just got fired 10 days after he came in to clean the place up. So I get all that. And what we try to do here is we're a town hall. We hear it all.
Yeah, and I think there is a fair point of people defending no matter what, but there's also people who attack no matter what. Like a lot of people over at the network, with four letters, attack my hometown city for basically no reason, and I think it goes both ways.
Listen, Mark, we are all guilty. We're all guilty of it. I do it myself. And the only thing I would say is you're put in a situation to make a judgment on a situation with part of the facts. We don't have all the facts on anything. But fans will take a nugget of what they want and turn it into however they want the story to be.
And as you said, that's true with almost anything.
Exactly.
You put the facts the way you want them, and you have, and unfortunately, there's colleagues of yours at the Four Letter Network who take the opportunity with facts that
anyone in particular that you're upset with at the Four Letter Network?
Well, usually Bomani Jones. Not a fan of his.
Who's that?
Just so that's why I listen to you, because
Jones.
Bomani Jones is on right now. So
no, good for him.
Yeah, he has maybe the worst numbers I've ever seen. Maybe after that, there's some other shows on the Four Letter Network that are pretty bad too. But people in Boston do not like Mr. Jones.
Listen, Mark, I'm not sure what happened to you, but thanks for the call. Millie is up next. Millie, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. God, I haven't seen you guys in 2 weeks, and it's been like 2 years, you know. But I just want to welcome you back. Good to see you. And,
thank you.
And, of course, John and Mark, it's fantastic. Anyway, as far as the Deshaun thing, I'm kind of worried, if he wasn't driving, why should he be arrested? I mean, it would have been different.
Well, the law
driving.
states, I'm assuming it's his car, he was in possession of the car. I'd like to know, since when do people use cars to take naps in the middle of the night?
Yeah, well, it was, if he got out of was it near the club or
listen, I'm going to defer to the Tuscaloosa police, who, by the way, made the arrest and charged him with DUI. They didn't charge him with sleeping in the back of his car.
Okay, well, that kind of makes sense then. But how did your vacation go?
It was great.
Oh, great. And John and Mark's were there. I hope they had.
We're all good. We're ready to roll with college football season, Millie.
Okay, well, I won't stay on today because you guys have so many people that want to talk to you and everything. But it's going to be wonderful to see you for 4 hours.
Yeah, starting in 2 weeks, it will be 5. Thanks for the call. I do appreciate it. John in Louisiana is up next. Hello, John.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Big fan of the show. I know y'all were talking about the Alabama thing today, but I just want to know, do you think LSU has a shot to win just win it all this year? Do you think?
I think LSU will have a good team, but I don't think they are a major threat to win the SEC. I think they're going to have to be better than we. And I'll tell you why. It's not so much whether I think or no. It's the schedule. Because of the total miscue last year with the Florida game, LSU has 5 conference games, and having to go on the road, Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama. That to me, there's just no room. You cannot make any mistakes. There's no room for error.
I think. Paul, honestly, I think so. I mean, Tennessee, I know it's on the road, but I think they can take Tennessee. Florida, it will be a big one because it should be in Baton Rouge this year. But,
Well, I tell you what, if LSU can beat Auburn at home, then they're going to be that's a must, obviously. And then, if they can beat Tennessee, as you said, what happens if they lose on the road to Florida and Alabama? How are they going to win the SEC West?
That's true.
By the way, that is a perfect scenario. And I'll tell you, there's another game that concerns me for LSU, and that's at Mississippi State on the 3rd week of the season. That is a very treacherous game early on.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
I think they can take Mississippi State. I mean, I know they got a young quarterback in Nick Fitzgerald, but.
John, I'm really interested because I can be convinced. What are you basing your optimism on?
I just say it's been 6 years since we beaten Bama, and I just I just had enough of it. I think. Well, listen,
I think everyone unless Alabama just implodes, which hard to imagine they will, then I really don't see LSU winning that game. But listen. This is the time of the year when you should be optimistic. You should be upbeat. I'm not going to be the bearer of bad news because I don't know any more than you do. I probably know less. Thanks for the call. 855-242-7285. That is our number. Kevin Skarbinski will get his thoughts on the latest from Tuscaloosa when we come back.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shades.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
We welcome you back. Welcome you back to the program. We're back. Kevin Skarbinski is with us, too, the award-winning columnist for many, many years at Birmingham News and now as well as that AL.com over the weekend, opined about the Deshaun Hand arrest. We are learning more about that today from a new report. And, Kevin, always good to catch up with you. I read your column. I thought you made some great points. And I am curious, based on what we're hearing now, that Deshaun Hand was asleep in the car. First of all, it's a little confusing to me how you get arrested and charged with DUI, but then again, I'm not a DUI lawyer. Can you help us better understand what this is all about?
Well, yeah, Paul, I think we're all learning about the phrase actual physical control of a vehicle and what it means from a legal standpoint. According to TideSports.com, Deshaun Hand was behind the wheel of his car. The car was in park, but it was running in a parking lot, and that's when he was arrested for DUI. And I've read the state of Alabama statute on DUI, and it uses that phrase, actual physical control of a vehicle. And apparently, if you are even sleeping in your car, but the keys are in the car, certainly the keys are in the ignition and the car is running, that appears to fit the definition of you being in physical control of your vehicle. And obviously, Paul, being asleep behind the wheel with the car in park is, if you are intoxicated by the legal definition, then clearly that's better than the car being in drive and you driving while being intoxicated. I don't know. That may be a legal splitting of hairs. That may make things better for Deshaun Hand when it comes to him dealing with the legal system. I don't know what effect that will have on Nick Saban. I think that's what a lot of your listeners and my audience want to know.
Yeah, and certainly reaction, I don't need to tell you about reaction of Alabama fans. You live there. But, fans hear one thing and certainly like to be dismissive of outside noise. What are you sensing after your column, and what are you sensing today from fans in Alabama?
Well, fans all turn into defense attorneys when a player for their favorite team is accused of anything. And they're immediately looking for loopholes and reasons why that person should not be held accountable for his actions. In this case, the default position in this state for 10 years has been Nick Saban knows what he's doing, and you dare not question him. And I would say when it comes to football, he's proven that he is the best at what he does. And while that doesn't mean you can't question him, he's not the Pope. He's not infallible even in matters of football, but he's pretty darn good at what he does as a football coach. When it comes to his record as a disciplinarian, you could point to, and I did this research on Saturday before that column, this is the sixth Alabama football player to be arrested, in the seventh instance of an Alabama football player being arrested for DUI in the last 4 years. I don't know how that compares to other programs. I don't know how that compares to the University of Alabama as a college or other colleges. That appears to me to be too many. So you could question whether what Nick Saban is doing on that front is working.
Yeah, and certainly he has been. I know this news does not get into the state of Alabama, but you do read about things outside. I mean, he has been almost predictably ridiculed by a number of cynics every time one of these episodes occur, whether it's a player driving down the highway with the key in the ignition or sitting in a parking lot with the key in the ignition. Do you think that is deserved?
Well, there appears to be an inconsistency in that of those previous players who were arrested for DUI, a couple of them missed a game, and some of them did not. The problem in trying to judge whether he's doing the right thing is we don't know all the details. We don't know the prior history of behavior of all of these players, and I would caution fans, because they don't either. And you're hearing a lot of this with Deshaun Hand. Well, he hasn't done anything wrong up to this point. Well, as far as you know, and I'm not saying he has, but I'm saying we don't know all the background. We don't know if they have any priors in terms of missteps off the field, if they've been in Nick Saban's doghouse for any reason up to this point. So those are all factors that Nick Saban and any coach take into account before they hand down discipline, and that's why I think Nick Saban is smart. And a lot of coaches do this too, Paul. They don't make hard and fast rules. I think if you found guilty of DUI, you should sit at least one game. I think that should be a hard and fast rule. I think that offense is far too serious, it's far too common, and it's taken far too lightly in this society, not just in college football. But that's me. I'm not coaching a college football team. I'm not getting paid $7 million a year to coach one. I think that should be a hard and fast rule. But coaches, and this is not exclusive to Nick Saban, maybe are smarter than that or more savvy than that, and they don't set down hard and fast rules, so they can make nuanced judgments and talk about changing behavior, and discipline is not about punishment. And by the way, that's become a common mantra among Alabama fans since Nick Saban landed on that line some time ago. Discipline is not just about punishment, it's about changing behavior. It's amazing how often you hear that in this state.
Well, all that is great, Kevin, but I'm going back to Deshaun Hand from what we know today, and this is just a report by a good reporter, but still, this information was not known the other day that Deshaun Hand was asleep in his car when Nick Saban did make some judgment, did he not? He talked about the behavior. And then he added he did not condone the behavior, but then he added, like he always does, that we're still trying to gather information. Is that just to give him cover on both ends?
I think part of it was. I think part of it's simply the truth that at that point he probably was gathering information to ultimately make his decision. I just think, Paul, and I think he's guilty of this, and look, he's the loudest voice in college football. If Nick Saban were to stand up at a press conference Thursday when they start fall camp and say to the world, okay, I've had enough of this. From now on, if you are found guilty of DUI in my program, you will sit the next football game. I think that would send a powerful message that no one else in college football can send quite like he could. I don't expect him to do that.
I want to ask you, broadening this a little bit to fans and media alike, because a lot of people in our profession felt like they knew the real Hugh Freeze until a week and a half ago. I did not. How difficult is it, Kevin, getting doing what you do and doing what all of us do, looking at coaches? We always have to. I mean, I've had major coaches, as I know you have, lie straight to your face. And once they do that, it's difficult to believe them again. In Hugh Freeze's case, I always felt like he was telling the truth. It turned out that he probably wasn't. How do you square that in the many years that you've covered teams and tried to make judgments and decisions and offer opinions based on these people?
Well, it makes you cynical, Paul. It certainly does. And as you said, I've had coaches, players, administrators look me in the eye, people that I had trusted up to a point, and tell me a flat-out lie. I didn't know it was a lie at the time, but I learned it later, and certainly that changes your relationship with not only that individual, it changes your relationship with everyone in the profession. And I have gone out of my way. The longer I've been in this business, the older I've gotten, I've gone out of my way to make the distinction between an individual as a coach or a player and a person. Those are very different things. And just because you are very good at coaching football or playing football, that has no bearing on your standing as a human being. You can be a great person and a great coach, a great person and a great player. But the two don't always go together. We've seen it far too often. And we've seen it in some of us, and I know you fall into this category as well. Some of us have seen it about people, and maybe it's never gone public. But it colors our judgment. It colors our opinion of those people because we may know things that the general public doesn't about certain individuals who are portrayed as, quote-unquote, good guys.
No doubt. Well, Kevin, we'll continue watching this story. I'm sure you'll continue hearing from your many, many fans supporting you. And always great.
An email just popped in as you spoke, Paul.
I have no doubt. Well, thank you very much for your time. We'll talk, I hope, very soon.
Thanks, Paul. Have
good
a good
stuff.
day.
Kevin Scarborough. And I want to just say one thing about what he said. And he did offer that sometimes we do know things, sometimes we don't know very much. But one thing I do know, when someone lies to me, it's always more difficult to take that person at face value. And I'm not in the business of going up and down the rosters of coaches that I cover who have lied to me and the degrees that they have lied to me. But I'm basically just saying that we're all guilty of not being able to square that. When someone lies to you, you tend to be extremely cynical in the future when they say something. We'll take a short break. More of your phone calls when we come back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're talking to Dennis Dodd a little bit later on about 15 new names have surfaced to replace Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. Let's check out Kevin in Alabama. Kevin, how are you? Good afternoon. Kevin, you there?
Touch up on you. Yes, sir.
Go right ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, I just wanted to touch up on what Kevin just said on the interview you just had.
Yes.
The law in Alabama from Montgomery to Phoenix City, anywhere in that area, for the last 10 to 15 years that I know of, has been that if you are in a car, even in a back seat, passed out or sleeping or whatever, if your keys are in any kind of reach, they can get you.
Okay,
for,
so let me ask you,
like
since very few cars nowadays, you actually have a key in the ignition. Does that mean
Right.
if you're sitting in the front seat, the key is in your pocket? Does that qualify? Does the car have to be on?
No, it does not.
Okay.
It does not. It's happened to me before, and I wound up getting a double whammy from it because they got me for the DUI, and then when my lawyer questioned them on that, they turned around and got me for public intoxication. So they got me for both, and that was some hefty fines there.
No, I mean I don't understand this. If I drink too much,
Yes, sir.
and I get in my car and I say, you know what, I'm just not capable of driving. The best thing for me to do is sleep this off. Isn't that supposed to? Shouldn't the courts recognize that as being a good thing?
I think they should, but like I said, I'm with you though. I don't make the laws. I don't know. You know, it's just sometimes it's just that's the way my luck goes anyway. But
and when they arrested you for this, what was the rationale?
Oh man, it was pretty terrible. I mean, I lost my license, I lost my job. I mean, a bunch of fines. I mean, probation. I mean, just everything.
Did you have any DUIs on your record?
No, sir.
That's incredible. That is incredible. And I'm as someone who was critical of Deshaun when I heard the news, I'm beginning to wonder about the laws of Alabama more than anything.
Oh man, it's like they, you know, and it's anywhere. I mean, with the way things are now, with just everywhere and everybody. I mean, it's crazy. Laws are there. It seemed like to me at the time it was like they got you either way. So.
I mean, shouldn't you be able to crawl in your back seat? I mean, I just don't know.
I would think so, but man, where I'm from in Phoenix City, they can get you for drinking in your yard. I mean, you know, they will pull up and arrest you for public intoxication in your yard.
Well, listen,
you know,
I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Hopefully, you've worked, you've got everything back in order. I hope you have.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have. It's just it's just a hard lesson learned. I mean, the main thing is that anybody that drinks, even myself, I mean, I still do occasionally or whatever, but just be responsible. If not, get a ride. I mean,
yeah, no, that's a good. That's a fair point. Listen, thank you very much for the call. That's incredible. Ed is up next in Virginia. Ed, thank you, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. Missed you for the last 2 weeks. Glad to see you back on air, and I don't have the Southeast Conference withdrawal.
Well, good.
I wanted to talk
we're not going anywhere for a long
Deshaun
time. Glad you're back.
Deshaun Hand is from Northern Virginia. A young man who played on a prominent ACC team who was from Northern Virginia was asleep in his car. What he ended up getting, which I find it difficult for the coach to determine the penalties, was he got fined $350, his lawyer fees, was put on probation for 12 months, and then the kid didn't want to go back and play football because they made him do sessions with people there who were really drug addicts and everything else, and the probation officer said, we hate to do this, but this is the only system we have. And they put him in that, and he completed the process, but he also had to do 100 hours of community service from Northern Virginia. They're very strict about alcohol. They're afraid because the death rates of alcohol are extremely higher than they were say, when I was young 40 years ago.
Well said. Very well said, Ed. Thank you very, very much.
Wait a minute. I have one question for you.
Of course.
Since everything's been going on with Ole Miss, and now they supposedly found 12 boosters that contributed to athletes and everything, and after everything comes out, how long do you think it will take Ole Miss to recover from this? You think this is a half a decade or?
Well, I think it really depends on the penalty, and that's, everyone wants to talk about Hugh Freeze and make cracks, and that comes with the territory. But the real issue isn't whether Hugh Freeze misdialed an escort service or whether he was the Gold Star customer every month. The real question is what the NCAA says about Ole Miss's response. Hugh Freeze's personal life is not going to be an issue there. His faithfulness to his wife or his devotion to massage parlors is not going to be an issue there. The issue there is whether the NCAA believes Ole Miss's defense of Hugh Freeze, and one of the defenses of Hugh Freeze is this: that he's a man of integrity, that he's a believable person, and therefore when he says he didn't know that all this was going on around him, that you have to cut him some slack. That's a real problem for Ole Miss now, that they're riding up to Indianapolis in the same boat with Hugh Freeze, and that's not a good boat to be in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. I'm just concerned, if he's one.
They better hope some escort lady named Cupcake doesn't come out of a cake and say I'm the one, and I know all the nefarious details. Anyway, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. We'll be back with much, much more after this. Your phone calls as well. And we welcome you back to the program. More on what's become almost a law school class here from the state of Alabama. We understand getting more information from a lot of friends of mine in high places in Alabama about the arrest of Deshaun Hand over the weekend. The statute is pretty clear. If you're in the car in possession of the keys, you are going to be charged. Now, you can argue, and a good lawyer could probably get him out of this charge. Remember, just because the police charge you doesn't mean that this cannot ultimately be thrown out. Our next guest has been missing for too long. He is Armin Katayan, the 60 Minutes contributing correspondent. It was a couple of years ago they did that unforgettable piece on Nick Saban, and it was just announced at the White House that Armin will be taking Anthony Scaramucci's place.
You're the second person that has said that to me in the last 20 minutes.
Armin, there was a time when you couldn't take your eyes off the sports world. Now it's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
No kidding. I having lived in that nightly news world for a long time, I take pity on the people that are covering Washington politics at the moment, because it's we're about ready to get into August. Some people want to take a vacation and break away from it, but I mean, it's just a never-ending saga that just shows no signs of slowing down. So, and today with the mooch, I actually know Anthony not well, but certainly know him and move in some of the circles he does in New York. And man, talk about self-inflicted wounds. So we move on with whatever's happening there now from day to day.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about your world for a moment. Certainly. You being a big college football fan, your book a couple of years ago dove deep into the recesses of college football. Anxious to get your thoughts on the upcoming season. I know you have a couple of schools you follow pretty closely.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten interesting. It's almost, from one day to the next, Paul. I mean, just what happened with Hugh Freeze and, the last couple of weeks was just when you think, fact can't approach, or fiction can't approach fact, something like that happens, and you're just looking for where the
where the elevator stops sometimes. And I just don't know at this point. Every time I think that we've hit bottom someplace, whether it was what happened up at, in Minnesota, or certainly now with Ole Miss and some other schools. Certainly I spent far too long trying to get to the bottom, or not far too long, but I spent a great deal of time at Baylor trying to understand the pathology of what was happening in that program. Sometimes it's hard to believe, and I do, I know with Deshaun and everything that's going on, you cannot excuse in any way, shape, or form what happened at Baylor or what happened in Minnesota, or certainly some of these other sexual assault cases or criminal assault cases. But, let's remember these kids are still 18 to 23 years old, and they make mistakes like a lot of college kids do. And, the off with the head kind of theories that are bouncing around right now, I have difficulty in lining up with that.
I want to ask you, you mentioned freeze, and certainly it's hard to imagine covering anything at a higher level in the world of journalism than what you have done so well at CBS News and many other publications from this company to Sports Illustrated, but especially for 60 Minutes. And I ask you because I found myself liking Hugh Freeze very much, believing what he told me, and this is, as you know, Armin, we started at a similar time in the business. This is coming from a cynic. We do get taken in by people, do we not?
I have to tell you, I went down there. We were talking about doing a 60-minute sports piece about Jimmy Sexton, and Jimmy being Hugh's agent, and I spent some time at Ole Miss with Jimmy and Hugh just last year, and I was in Hugh's office for about half an hour before a game and 45 minutes or so after the game, and I could see how you could easily get drawn into that kind of that personality. He had, that whole faith, family, football, love my kids, love my family, love Ole Miss. It was very impressive, and I could see how. I know Lars Anderson wrote a very powerful piece about how he got caught up in Hugh's orbit, and that's what that just struck me in terms of, and I was taken aback by it, honestly, because I was like, God, am I that naive that that I could get, because I'm like you, I've been around the block a few times, and I can smell BS when I'm around it, and I didn't feel it. I think some of it was because Jimmy was there, and he's gregarious, and Hugh felt comfortable. But in the same token, I that was literally the first thing I thought of was like, wow, I'm in that camp too. I think in a way, and that's what's scary about this thing sometimes, Paul, is that college football coaches, I think, are the best. College basketball and college football are the best salesmen that I've ever run across in any line of work. They know how to talk. They know how to walk. They know when to say what. They are incredibly charismatic for the most part. I mean, you listen to P.J. Fleck up at Minnesota now, and he could have been a preacher at any level. And that's what he's preaching right now. And some of these other coaches, it's so easy to get caught up in it. And I found myself thinking about Nick and about some of the other coaches that I've been around, and I really, of all of the coaches I've been around, I would say that if Nick ended up doing something that really crossed the line, I would be shocked. And I know I'm probably sticking my foot in my mouth right here. But, give me a half an hour, right? And the next thing you know, I'll be calling you back saying, "Oh well, I didn't really mean that." But it's so easy to get drawn in, and especially when you're covering a coach like Freeze day in and day out. You're down there. It's a small town. You get the national media that sort of passes through, does the profile piece, and leaves. And the locals there are as smart as they are and as experienced as they are. They're living that day to day, and it's hard to see the darkness there.
Armin, let me go back to Nick Saban, because you did this piece on him for 60 Minutes, and we talked a lot about it years ago, but clearly, as you know, audiences come and go, and a lot of new people to our program perhaps did not hear you talk about that. But I do want to ask you about being around him, studying him, profiling him for one of the most important, if not the most important, news magazine programs in television history. And thinking about that time and watching him today at 66 years old continue to be at the top of college football.
Well, he evolves. That's what I love about Nick, is that he's not set in any kind of, I mean, the process is the process, but I think the process evolves too from year to year as kids change and coaches change. But I think that's you see so many innovative ideas as far as sports performance and the psychology of winning and what they're trying to teach kids. And, I said something today, is I've sat outside Nick's office and waiting to go in to see him on either the Story for 60 or on a social visit. And I've sat in that chair right across from, Miss Linda Leone is chief assistant and executive assistant. And you do feel like you're in a principal's chair there. And you're kind of waiting for that door to open and Nick to come out. And, if and I know some of the kids that have sat in that chair, and as Linda would say, you once is once, twice is you're running on red, and three times you're gone. And so I think what Nick has done is he's evolved with how he treats his players and how he counsels his players. And I think that's the mark of a great football coach, and it's a mark of a great person that can, at 66, not be stuck in the mud on my way or the highway kind of philosophy. That being said, whatever happens with Deshaun, there's going to be a price to pay internally, and I think it's going to be, for a public mistake, Deshaun is going to pay dearly privately and painfully, I think, and Scott Cochran will have something to do with that at some point in time. And I think that's okay. You have to understand that, you put a black mark on the program, and there's going to be a price to pay for that. But that's what makes Nick and Belichick and some of the other people that I really respect in the business. They have a philosophy that's rooted and doesn't change about how they coach, but they're so innovative in how they approach the game and how they approach their players. And, when you're dealing with 105 kids, being a parent essentially to 105 kids, I mean, I had two daughters, and trust me, I wouldn't want to multiply that times 50. And I think that is remarkable, really, that there have been so few major mistakes out of the Bama program.
Armin, I think that was, 6-7 years ago that you spent the time with Nick Saban. Being with him then and thinking about him starting the 2017 season #1 in the country, did you think he would still be there? And did you believe at that time, if he was, he would still be, like we talked a minute ago, about at the top of his game?
Yes, and yes, I did. And I wouldn't say that about too many other coaches, because it's so, God, it's just so hard to win one, let alone as many as Nick has won. He's just got that something that's different inside of him. It's that how good can I be? I was just, I've been working on this Tiger Woods book for the last 3 years and doing a lot of the writing right now. And there's a parallel there. And one of the things that, even when Tiger won the Masters by 12 shots in 1997 and set a record, or even when he won the U.S. Open by 15 shots in 2000 and set another record, it was never about just beating the field, and it was really never about setting a record. It was about how good can I be, how great can I be, and that's the people like that, like the Bradys of the world and the Peyton Mannings of the world, and some of the other just phenomenal athletes you get a chance to run across in our careers, that's the standard for them. They're not really, the hardware and the trophies are nice, but it's really about a pedigree and a historical legacy, I think. And I think that's what drives Nick is how good can I be? How good can my players be? How good can my teams be? And it's remarkable. I mean, he's so fit at his age, and I think that's one thing. He's very healthy. Two, we've talked about, he's got a great partner in Terry, who, without her, I think it would be an absolute, very different kind of a show. And, but as the game has gotten more complex, and it's certainly gotten more competitive, and it's gotten, I think, more treacherous in a lot of ways, he just seems to, he rises above that. There's very few of them that, in history, I think, that you can put on that pedestal. But he's one of them for sure. Not to sound like your editor, but when's the Tiger book ready to hit the book? Well, we're turning it in. I've been living with it for almost 4 years, so I'm ready to say sayonara at this point. But Jeff Benedict and I we're coming around the clubhouse turn. We're really happy with where we're at right now. It's due in October, and it comes out next spring. I think next May. But it's been the hardest thing I've ever had to do, Paul. It's just it's, in a lot of ways, it's like a 10,000 piece puzzle that are all the same colors, and sometimes they seem all the same shapes, and you're trying to fit everything together. But I think we have a very good handle on it now, and the writing is that I'm living with it right now, day to day. So sooner, hopefully, than later, I'll get it done. You and Jeff, of course, the authors of the System, the New York Times best-selling book about college football that came out 5 years ago. Listen, always great to catch up with you, and be well. We'll be anxious to read the book, Armin, when it comes out. Talk soon, Paul. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Armin Contayan, one of the best sports journalists, really, not only of this era, but of all time, joining us to talk about the comings and goings at both Tuscaloosa in Oxford. We will take a break. More of your phone calls, more guests after this. We'll talk about the Ole Miss situation, who is next at Ole Miss while the skirmishes in court and out of court continue to be fought in the state of Mississippi. Let's grab Lou, who's not too far from Mississippi, in Memphis. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. How are you?
What's going on, my man?
Oh, nothing much. I wanted to share a little story about DUIs. I've never gotten one, but I was once caught speeding and was sentenced to driving school. And I was the only person in that driving school, the 3 most boring hours of my life, that wasn't intoxicated when they got their ticket. But after the 3 hours was over with, the Memphis policeman who was leading the class said something to me that I thought was just absolutely brilliant. It would put every DUI lawyer in America out of business if people would listen to what he said. He said, when you get drunk and you're too impaired to drive home, you don't call a cab, you don't call your wife, you call a wrecker. I said, a wrecker? He goes, yes, call a wrecker. That way you get a ride home from somebody else, and you wake up the next day, and your car is at your house. I thought that was just totally ingenious.
I've always wondered about that because because you always I've had friends who've had to go home who after getting home or having someone take them home still have to go find their car. Mm-hmm. What's it cost to have a wrecker take you home?
Well, the policeman said in Tennessee about $9,750 less than a DUI. So it's about $200,
very smart policeman. Wow, that's pretty cool. Hey, great story, Lou. Really appreciate it.
And thanks for having us the other day.
Oh, it was
Take
great.
Care.
I wish we could do it more often. Thanks so much, Jim. Speaking of a wrecker, is next. Jim, go right ahead.
Speaking of what?
A wrecker.
What do you mean?
He's like, a wrecker, a home wrecker, a show wrecker. I mean, you just got to.
That's what I mean. Why are you speaking of me as a wrecker?
It was actually a compliment. I mean, you walk in and everything, you just clear the room.
Okay, I'm going to wreck it right now, okay? And I'm going to speak of a wrecker that just got wrecked. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Paul, I would have been shocked had Donald Trump not let go Scaramucci. And I want to hear what you got to say.
Well, he just got through saying that Trump said that because he felt like his or the press secretary said that Trump felt like his comments in the New Yorker article were just inappropriate.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. Let's stop right here. They got the wrong thing. They need to get my Twitter address on the screen, not Jim from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. What's Mark doing? I mean, what's John doing?
I don't know. These guys are slacking.
He's not on the ball today, man.
John, Mark, you guys realize who's on the phone?
Jim, it's our first day back on TV in like 2 weeks. Cut us some slack
I know.
here, okay?
I'm so thrilled that I'm just beside myself. Look, Paul, I'm going to try to calm down. You've got to make comments about this deal because I would have been absolutely shocked.
Again, I mean, he was a cartoon character.
But more than that, Paul, this guy was a street punk.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, what?
No, I mean, listen, I was embarrassed. I just thought I didn't think he'd have a long shelf life, and thank goodness he didn't.
You were talking about 10 minutes for you need to apologize to Mike Price. This guy Scaramucci beat him on the record for time not there when he got signed by Donald Trump. Boy, what a great
Jim,
video.
you're familiar with the term a hit job? He was brought in to take the other guy out, and once he did the job, he was shown the door.
You talking about Rance?
Yeah, he had one assignment.
Yeah, not to dance with Rance.
And he did that well, by the way.
But seriously, man, I mean, I can't believe that Trump. I bet Trump. The embarrassment. I said something on Twitter about it, the other day. But good night. I wondered. I just couldn't believe if Trump tried to keep that guy around with what he said, how he acts.
I didn't think he was going to mesh well when he walked in today. This is just my theory, and he told a retired 4-star Marine general that you're in my chair at the head of the table. I think that may have been it. And he goes, now your name is? He said, I'm the mooch. I mean, what are you talking about? Who are you? What you doing in my chair? Get out of here.
Isn't that amazing? By the way, Paul, was that Lou Galloway? Was that the blocking back? Was that the blocking Lou that blocked me on Twitter?
Yeah, that's blocking Lou.
Blocking Lou. Memphis. Is he more famous in Memphis than Elvis now because he blocked me on Twitter?
He's somewhere between Elvis
and Jerry Lee Lewis, right?
Jerry Lewis. And the Killer, yeah.
I tell you what, Paul, you're great today. You really are. I'm going to give you a compliment. You look better today after the 2-week rest in the sun. You did something. You look good today. I mean, I don't give rare. I'm rare with compliments. And I also am a connoisseur of what looks good, I promise you. Because I look good, Paul. You look good today.
Well, thank you. No, I think from now on to ensure that this continues, I'm going to work 1 day a month.
That would be a wise move. But seriously, back to us. What's going to happen to Scaramucci's in the same place now as Hugh Freeze. In other words, both of them are they're done.
He'll be a commentator on some channel. He'll be on Morning Joe tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see. I bet he will. And I'll probably CNN is the only place he's got a chance. CNN.
You're probably right about that.
Both of them, Hugh Freeze and Scaramucci.
Okay, hey Jim, they're telling me we have a guest, but hey, always good.
They always tell you something negative. All right, thanks, Paul.
Okay, good. Yeah, we got Jim compliments. Wow. Are we about to have a solar eclipse or what? We will take a break. Dennis Dodd will tell us who the next Ole Miss coach is going to be when we come back.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Dennis Dodd joining us from CBS Sports. Certainly a lot of opinions from Dennis. Dennis, always good to catch up. Before we get into what's going to happen next, I am curious, since we missed a little time, at least on television, your thoughts on the fall of Hugh Freeze and did you see it coming?
I don't know if I saw it coming. The way it did. The the administration, obviously the AD, had doubled down on Hugh, and his demise, if you will, came from an outside source, a person, a lawyer, checking phone records that I'm frankly surprised that Ole Miss had not checked from the beginning of this investigation. I think that might be the first thing you start doing when the NCAA starts poking around it. Nevertheless, that it came, it came from that. It came from a lawsuit, running phone records, and as we know, I guess as we all assume right now, nothing to do with the investigation itself, just some questionable conduct.
And as we before we get to the final question here, let me ask you, what is your sense? You've covered a lot of NCAA hearings. You know how this game is played. Your thoughts on what Ole Miss has now taking to that committee? And I ask you that because a lot of their defense was based on believing Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, it's incongruous. If I'm a member of the committee, of the infractions committee, I would say a lot of your case is based on defending the honor and ethics of a man you just basically fired, at least resigned under pressure. Explain yourself. I'm sure that question will be brought up. Now, the fact that he was maybe going to be suspended because of that new coach's responsibility bylaw is now moot. But they're still going to defend the honor of the school so they don't get another year of postseason or more scholarships taken away.
If you had to guess, and I think the initial thought by some of us, well, maybe this is good, but once you digest that, just like you said, I don't know how it's good for them that Hugh Freeze is no longer there.
Yeah, no, look, it was my opinion. I may have even said it on the show, up until the point that he was let go, it was my opinion they were going to stay with him whether he got suspended or not. I was on record as saying I believe Ole Miss would keep Hugh Freeze if he got suspended for a year, because they had gone this far and he had led them to unprecedented heights. Why wouldn't they? And back up their word. So they are, as a coach, as success on the field, they are something less than they were. Now we'll see how that plays out in the future, but the net is they're worse at football than they were.
And let's move ahead. We don't know the key component of this, or two key components, how this season goes, and most important, what the NCAA says. But not knowing that, give us some insight into what Ole Miss could do next.
Coaching-wise?
Yes.
I waited a decent mourning period and posted my candidates today. I think right now Matt Luke's got as good a shot as any. When you consider we don't know what the penalties are going to be, we don't know who's going to be available or who they consider, and the guy that's going to be in front of that administration and players every day, if he has any amount of success, I believe Matt Luke has a heck of a chance. If they wanted to go to a bridge coach, I think a guy like Les Miles might be good. If the penalties are that bad and they go to him and they use him as a bridge coach to the next guy, I think that'd be good. But there's a bunch of guys out there. I don't think Lane Kiffin is a viable option. I don't think I thought at one time Kevin Sumlin was, but then I started to think same division. He's 2-3 against Ole Miss, and I think has lost 3 in a row. So I don't know why they want Kevin Sumlin, who we obviously know is under fire.
Let's talk about Matt Luke. Certainly, of those who don't know much about him, he has all the credentials you need. He has the blood from the family, played there, looks good. What do you think he would need to do on the football field and off, just from a leadership standpoint, to win this job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there's a magic number. Obviously, 3-9 isn't going to help, something like that. But I think if he unites the players, unites the fans, the players buy into him. Shea Patterson set the tone, I think, for the players when he came out after the bowl ban was announced and said he was all in. And from that point, I did sense a chip on the shoulder sort of ethic from the Ole Miss players, and certainly that followed up at the SEC media days. I think they have the talent to do well at the 5 and 7, but I think there's a psychological component to this. You know, when there really is nothing to play for, and that's the case at Ole Miss this year. How do you respond on November 1st when you're 4 and 5 or something like that? I think that story's yet to be written.
And if you look at interim coaches, we just saw one last year, Ed Orgeron, who got the job even though he didn't do what we all thought he had to do. Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely a possibility. I just think there's so much to be decided here. You know, I had to check on this, but I thought immediately the next guy's going to get 6 years. Well, as far as I know, Mississippi state law limits public contracts to 4 years. So you could have a wink and a nod for an automatic 4-year rollover. But if it's bad, the new guy's going to need more than 4 years. That's why I raised the possibility of a bridge coach. So we shall see. And I'll end on that note by asking you, guessing, and that's all it is. We know what Ole Miss is self-imposed. What do you think the NCAA, if they don't buy Ole Miss's argument, and certainly a lot of skeptics out there don't think they will, how bad could this penalty be?
Well, I think they have to consider that, and then I've written this, so I think it's on the table. They have to consider, or the NCAA may consider, if those phone calls to those journalists violated the confidentiality principle of the investigations. It just happened in North Carolina. North Carolina, believe it or not, had another violation added last week. I know because my story was involved, and they were added by John Duncan, the head of enforcement. So they violated the confidentiality principle, which is pretty much what it sounds like. You're not allowed to talk about the case while it's going on. That could be interpreted, in my opinion, with Ole Miss calling those journalists trying to spin the story.
It's always a danger, but it's those things are starting to come out. Dennis, always great to catch up. Thank you very much.
All right, Paul, thank you.
Dennis Dodd, an interesting look. And I will tell you, I want to talk about Matt Luke, and we'll talk to him later in the week. When I first heard his name, I did not think he could get this job, but his handling of the first week and a half have been positive. I'm not saying he will. His record on the field is critical, but say he does better than expected. Ole Miss picked to finish 7th, has a big win along the way, including maybe one with that in-state rival. Yeah, I could see him getting the job very easily. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls, more guests at 855-242-7285 when we come back. We welcome you back. More guests to come. Glad you're with us. An update later from Tuscaloosa on new information on the arrest of Deshaun Hand. We look forward to talking to Aaron Suttles about that. Bobby is up next in Birmingham. Hello, Bobby.
Hey, how you doing today, buddy?
What's going on, Bobby?
Welcome back. Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. You and John, Mark, Randy.
Thank you. We were gone too long.
Yeah. Let me ask you something.
Yeah, I'm all ears.
Has God bless you today? If not, send 1095 for the prayer call. I told you, didn't I?
Oh, my goodness. I knew there was going to be, and I told you so from Bobby about Hugh Freeze.
Paul, you didn't loan him no money, did you?
I tell you what, had he asked me, I would have, though.
I know you would.
I would have given him my house, my dog.
I know it. I know it.
I mean, that's how much I cared for Coach Freeze. You know that.
You know what I always said about that, Paul. That's your boy.
I tell you what. When a man looks me in the eye and quotes Bible verses and tells me I'm his friend and he appreciates me, I'm going to believe him.
Right, but
I'm
Paul,
a man of faith. I believe in people.
I'm a man of faith too.
I don't look at you and go, "You're conning me."
Paul, but I don't expect.
I mean, I don't look at you and think you're texting me while you're texting your escort service. That's not me.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, you jump out the river in the lake, boy. I swear, I tried to tell you.
If Hugh Freeze had told me to take my clothes off and run through the tunnel at Vaught Hemingway Stadium, right before the Alabama game, I would have done it because I knew there would have been a higher purpose.
But if I got wind of that, I'd have been there to catch it. Hey,
oh man, I knew this was coming.
But I tried to tell you. I've been telling you for 3 years.
Bobby, I just need to start listening. You know.
But you know when my daddy used to whip my ass, you know what he used to say, boy, I said, damn it, you got to learn it the hard way. You had to learn it the hard way.
I haven't fallen for someone since 10th grade.
Yeah. Hey, I heard y'all talk about old Mooch. You know old Mooch up there worth about $83 million now.
Well, other than the fact that Mooch's wife had a child the other day and he was too busy to be there for the birth, he was at the White House. Other than that, he's a first-rate guy.
Yeah, but that's Trump's right-hand man. He did what he was
I heard he was Donald Trump Jr.
Right. But Deshaun Hand, boy, they got a lot of laws on the books.
Yeah,
in
tell
Alabama.
me about this DUI law in Alabama.
Well, I've
never had to deal with that one.
Well, if you sit in the driver's seat.
Oh, the driver's seat's the key. Okay.
Right. The car can be off. But if you got the keys, they say, well, you can get ready to drive.
If I'm in the back seat, though, I'm okay.
Or he's on the passenger seat side. Right, but if you're under the wheel, you got the keys, they say, well, you can get ready to drive.
By the way, do we know what he was scoring on the breathalyzer?
No, I don't know.
I mean, we've kind of forgotten the fact that he may have been intoxicated in a car. He was asleep, so we shouldn't talk about this, right, Bobby?
Right, but Paul, they got me one time for walking two abreast, parading without a permit. I was on the sidewalk. But you know that's just Alabama. We'll come around.
I don't know. Sounds like a pretty good law to me.
Which one? Parading without a permit?
Why? Let me ask you this though, Bobby. Why would one of your senior leaders be putting himself and his teammates in harm's way a week before practice?
Well, Paul, it's like this, Paul. Whatever you do when you're dealing with a bunch of human beings, you always have that 10%. You never get 100%. You can get 90%, but you always gonna have that 10%.
So how do you think? How do you think Nick ought to handle it?
Well, that's up to Nick. Nick's the coach, you know.
Well, I was just asking your opinion. Are Alabamians allowed to give an opinion on Nick Saban, or do they have to?
Well, I can give an opinion. It's America.
I mean, you got an opinion on Trump, you got an opinion on Hugh Freeze, but when I asked you about Nick Saban, you clammed up like,
you know why?
First Amendment doesn't apply to Nick Saban in Alabama.
You know why I clammed up? You know why, Paul?
I really don't, but I cannot wait to hear.
Well, that's my boy. Everybody got it. Wasn't Hugh your boy? Nick my boy.
Okay.
All right. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, Nick's been my guy too. I like Nick. I just was never able to express it. I was too busy talking about how much I like Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
I mean, I got once you beat Nick a couple of times, I had to get behind my guy.
But Paul, I tried to tell you. You didn't want to listen.
Hey, is there anyone else that you need to tell me about? Because I am listening finally.
Well, I told you about Butch, but
Butch Jones. I like Butch Jones. I think he's a great coach.
Well, right. So Hugh Freeze was too. So he called. You better watch the chancellor. He might be next.
Thank you, Bobby. I believe in you, man. First guy to tell you I told you so.